This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
Doc, I'm glad to say that this week's Two Bad Hombres podcast is brought to you by The Athletic. Premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Two Bad Hombres listeners can get 20% off the first year of an annual subscription by visiting theathletic.com/DSP.
You're absolutely right, Vito. I've read theathletic.com each and every day since we've become subscribers, and all I can say is they do great work. They do in-depth profiles. They have a lot of inside information. All the reporters there, like James Edwards, I had a conversation with him at the Blake Griffin press conference, and these individuals are hardworking journalists, and if you're not reading The Athletic, you're missing out. Trust me, I wouldn't tell you this, even though we are subscribers of them as well. Check out theathletic.com/DSP and save 20%. It's really worth your investment if you're a passionate Detroit sports fan.
I was trying to get it how I live. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get time. I don't get time.
And we are still not tired on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Churco, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner and fun, that is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, welcome to the weekend. My goodness, I'm so looking forward to talking to you this week on this edition of the Two Bad Hombres podcast. What a Super Bowl. The Detroit Lions made news. The Matt Patricia presser made some news. I'm excited. It's a new era for Detroit Lions football, but we definitely have to recap the Super Bowl. What a game. Probably, to be honest with you, Vito, one of the top 3 football games I've ever watched. And you know me, I'm a guy that touts defense. Defense wins championships. And if either of the teams, the Eagles or the Patriots, actually played defense, they might have, the Patriots might have had a better chance of winning the game. And the Eagles might not have struggled so much to close it out. But both teams did not play defense at all. And basically, you could say the defenses were atrocious. But in terms of viewership and watching, I would take that every single game. It was an amazing 41-33 contest. There were so many things to talk about, but it was so awesome to sit and watch the Super Bowl. I loved it. I actually was telling my wife, I really loved watching it at the bar. It was fun shooting the shit with the fellas, and I had a really good time.
Did Bill Belichick, the hooded master, the so-called genius, lose the game for his team with a before-the-game decision he made to not start Malcolm Butler, star cornerback, received like 98% of the snaps at that position all season long. Supposedly, he had some disappointing play of late, showed up late, perhaps, missed curfew, maybe marijuana, something else, a multitude, right? A myriad of issues. Thing is, he only played special teams, so he did play. He played special teams, never played one snap in the secondary at cornerback.
All this week, Vito, in Boston and nationally, I think he's taken some grief. I think he's taken some heavy criticism regarding that decision because, he came out and basically gave the PR answer and said, I played the best 11 guys that gave us a chance to win. Many people will say, that if you had played Malcolm Butler, maybe you would have had a chance to stop the Eagles a bunch more than you actually did. And so it goes to what your ethics are, Vito. If Malcolm Butler, if it comes out that he actually broke rules and he violated team rules, I agree 100% with Bill Belichick. He's a man of principle, and he doesn't care. He probably would even say, even if it cost me the Super Bowl and I can uphold the standards of the team that I coach, I will do that. And the dude's already won a ton. The dude's already widely regarded as one of the best caliber coaches in the world. And so if he lowers his standards for anybody, it disregards and it really insults all the past players and the standards that he's created. And so when you're Bill Belichick, you fight for your rules all the time, no matter what. And if you're not showing up to team meetings, if you're high, if you're not productive in practices, if you're sick or have a fever or don't test well, if you don't show you're 100% behind what you're supposed to be doing, for Bill Belichick, he won't play you. And you can argue that it cost the team the Super Bowl, but there were other opportunities for the New England Patriots to make plays, and they just didn't. And even despite the fact that Malcolm Butler did not play, the New England Patriots had the ball late in the game with a chance to win, and the Eagles made the plays. In essence, yeah, they didn't play the Patriots, per se, the best game, but you got to also give credit to what the Eagles did. They put the pedal to the metal. They made plays. They were aggressive. They did not back away from having a backup in Nick Foles. They treated him like a world-class athlete. They called plays. I mean, that call in the second quarter on fourth down, at the goal line was probably one of the best 3 calls ever made in football. It was amazing, and everybody was cheering, and throwing the ball to Nick Foles was awesome. The Eagles just made plays. They made a lot more plays, and both teams on defense didn't really show up. But in essence, I respect Bill Belichick for what he did. The game in and of itself was fascinating. I loved every second of it.
I give Belichick a lot of credit, too, and I think he made the right decision. So I guess we will agree. Not agree to disagree, but we both agree on that point that Butler should have sat. Now, the only thing I have maybe that would be an issue with Belichick in that decision is why play him on special teams then? Why not just sit him completely? Now, it didn't matter. He couldn't really make a big impact on special teams. It took him away from making, or where he could have made the biggest impact, which is playing Alshon Jeffrey and guarding him man-to-man, maybe being able to stop him, which they couldn't stop him at all, especially in the first half of football, before Gilmore eventually got the assignment to cover Alshon Jeffrey in the second half of action.
The one point I will make is if you want to send a message, maybe you don't do it for the whole game. Maybe you do it for the half, and then you call upon Malcolm Butler maybe to make a key play in the second half when you need it. Maybe you don't get those touchdowns to Ertz or things like that. Maybe you kind of go into the halftime just down a touchdown or so, or down 6 to 10 points, and you're able to utilize him in the second half. So some people will argue that, was the punishment okay? Did the punishment fit the crime? And I'm not so sure that we'll ever know what happened. But before we get to our guest, I look forward to it. How did you experience the Super Bowl? Where'd you watch it?
At my uncle's house, and it was fun because a cousin came in from Alaska, got the chance to see him and to catch up with him. So I enjoyed that. It was a fruitful experience, full of fun. Some cerveza was flowing. That helped out with the game-watching experience. But the game was good overall-wise anyways. And I was totally off with my prediction. Do you remember my prediction?
No, was it?
Blowout victory by the Patriots.
No, come on.
An erroneous call right there. But anyways, you know what? Belichick making that decision shows that he stuck to principle. If he has done that with other players in the past and wants to continue to do that with all his players, no matter the star status of them, probably outside of Tom Brady. Tom Brady would have played. We know that much. But that's who Bill Belichick is. And guess what? He's gotten to 8 Super Bowls being that type of coach, right? Laying down the law at times when he's had to. Now, he's taken on troubled players like Randy Moss and others, giving them second chances perhaps. But if they make mistakes like that leading up to the Super Bowl, when you're in Minnesota of all places, where are you going in Minnesota to get into trouble? You're really trying to find trouble then. It looks bad. It's a bad reflection on Malcolm Butler more than anything. And I think Belichick made the right decision, even though, like you said, we'll probably never find out the full reason or full reasons why Butler had to sit out.
All right, Vito, who's the featured guest of Two Bad Hombres this week?
Detroit Free Press Lions beat writer Dave Birkett.
All right, Vito, let's dial him up.
And now joining me on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres for some fresh feedback is Dave Birkett, Detroit Free Press Lions beat writer. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm doing real good. How about yourself?
Great, and thanks for coming on this week's episode. And when I say fresh feedback, I know you're on this week's episode to provide some fresh feedback on the hiring of Matt Patricia. First and foremost, simply, what are your thoughts on the hire of Matt Patricia?
Well, I mean, I think it was a pretty telegraphed move going back even 2 years when Bob Quinn took over. It's no surprise by any means, and we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But, I think the Lions and Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, they have a couple things going for them with this union. Number one is just the fact that Bob and Matt know each other so well. And I'm a big believer that, in the NFL, a big part of success is having the coach and GM on the same page. They'll talk the same language. They certainly will, won't be keeping secrets from each other. So I think they have a chance to succeed for that reason. What they do, they need to make some more, some good personnel moves this offseason, but I can't fault the Lions for going down the Matt Patricia road.
Now, Dave, take us in a little bit. You had the chance covering the Super Bowl to see Matt Patricia, to get a little bit of insight into his preparation, get a chance to see how he addressed the media. Take us in a little bit. What was it like the week you spent at the Super Bowl, and especially covering Matt Patricia?
Yeah, look, Patricia's gotten good reviews from everybody I've talked to. I mean, current and former players, his assistants, his former coaches. I mean, everybody he's come in contact with, he seems to have or get good references from. Look, he's a hard driving coach. There's no doubt about that. Demanding and exacting. He'll be brutally honest with players when the situation calls for it. But I think there's maybe a little bit of a nurturing side too that at least from afar you wouldn't necessarily expect. He's got that gruff, the big beard, some of those things that may lead you to believe he's just a tough guy. But I think it goes a little beyond that with Matt.
What do you think of the decision to retain Jim Bob Cooter as the offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I know some people do. I mean, look, I don't think Cooter is, the best play caller. I do think, he's meant good things for Matthew Stafford so far. We saw some growth in the offense this year. Last year, you go back to 2016. They just it just didn't seem to work cohesively. And this year, I thought they got a lot more out of that offense. They still need to get more of a running game. I think I understand why Matt Patricia made the decision to keep Jim Bob Cooter, because I think he gives you the best chance to win right now.
The press conference to introduce Patricia as the 27th head coach in Lions franchise history is Wednesday. Now, through the press conference, Dave, what do you hope to learn about Patricia that you think simply can be learned?
Man, I don't know. I'm going to have to rack my brain. About a month since I first started writing about Patricia, and I've written, from the trivial, the beard and the pencil in the ear and some of those things, to what his defense is going to look like and who his influences are and, what he thinks of some personnel. I think maybe that's the thing, is just diving a little more into the specifics of the Lions roster and get some thoughts on him and, what he's inheriting and maybe what makes good players at specific positions as well. So maybe he'll shed a little bit more light on that. Those are some things that obviously he wasn't going to talk about. Didn't want to talk about the Lions, of course, but didn't get into specifics the last couple of weeks during his preparation for the Super Bowl. So perhaps at his press conference he'll give us some of that.
Now, Dave, some of the fans that follow us on our podcast, at Detroit Podcast, and follow us on Twitter, they've kind of peeked at the Super Bowl and said, whoa, that's the individual, that was the scheme that was prepared by Matt Patricia in the Super Bowl in the biggest game. It didn't seem like, the scheme was properly executed to try and stop the Philadelphia Eagles. And some fans are a little bit concerned, have messaged us, whoa, let's pause for a second and look at what this guy actually brings to the table. What was your reaction to at least what you saw in the Super Bowl? And should those fans be concerned a little bit? Should they be critical regarding what Matt Patricia actually brings as the former defensive coordinator of the Patriots?
Look, I understand it. I mean, you're on the national stage. Defense did not play well. He'd be the first to tell you that. But, win or lose, I wasn't going to read too much into that game. There's so much more that goes into being a good head coach than, specifically one game, but even, overall on defense. I mean, Matt is going to run the defense. He's going to have a big hand in what happens defensively. But, he's it's what he does for the team and the people he puts around him, and if he can get the most out of the players, and those things I don't think you can tell from that Super Bowl performance. I think, look, the Patriots didn't have a ton of talent on defense, but they still finished top 5 in points allowed this year. And if you look at that roster, I went out to the AFC Championship game a couple weeks ago, and it was my first chance this year to see the Patriots up close and live. And just watching them on the field, I thought the Lions had a little bit better defensive talent than the Patriots do. Not by a lot, but that's sort of what I think the level of talent in New England was. So I think, look, I wouldn't read too much into what happened in the Super Bowl. It was a disappointing performance. I understand the frustration, but I don't think that's going to play one or another in what he does as Lions head coach.
And obviously, Patricia just coached up the defense in New England. Now, what's the biggest challenge you think, Dave, in him transitioning from coaching the defense only to the entire team with the Lions?
Well, yeah, that'll be a big transition. I mean, it's not that he doesn't, know offense. He played offensive line and he coached offensive line for a time. But, again, having watched him the last 2 games and just trained my binoculars on him a lot, his defense would come off the field and he'd grab the iPad and he'd go to work watching, cut-ups and, then sit in front of his defensive backs and defensive line. Worry about all that stuff, go over all that stuff with him. So it'll certainly be a different, from these, semantics of what he does on a daily basis. I mean, in game, he's going to have a lot of adjustments there, but by all accounts, he's interacted well. He's got relationships with people on the offensive side of the ball. He's prepared to be a head coach. So ultimately, I don't think it'll be, too difficult for him.
I believe the Lions currently are lacking a number one running back. Now, what are the other areas of need that the Lions need to address this offseason, Dave?
That's funny. I just wrote a little column on sort of the top 5 issues facing Matt Patricia, I guess. And when he walks in as head coach. And obviously after getting his staff in place and some of those things. But number one to me is what you do with Ziggy Ansah. And I know it's a Bob Quinn call ultimately, and they're going to have to figure out the salaries and all that. But that's just the biggest thing that the Lions have to deal with this offseason. They got a lot of cap room, close to $50 million, but they don't have a pass rusher. Are you gonna give Ziggy a long-term contract? Are you going to let him test free agency in hopes that you can get him on the cheap? Are you going to franchise him? If it's me, I would put the franchise tag on him. It's going to be $17.5 million or so. It's a lot of money for a guy that's been hurt the last 2 years, but you also need a defensive end. And if Ziggy is out of the mix, or if he becomes a free agent, he's going to be the top free agent pass rusher on the market. DeMarcus Lawrence will probably get franchised or re-signed with the Cowboys. So I think it's something that the Lions, they need to take care of Ziggy, and I think ultimately the best move is to end up franchising him.
And Dave, with that, hey, thanks for all the time, all the insight. Good luck in the press conference, and we'll talk to you again down the line here on Two Bad Hombres.
Sounds good. Happy to do it. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you much. Have a great day. And Doc, back here on Two Bad Hombres, that was Dave Birkett, the Detroit Lions beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. And I've never talked to him. I know you've had him on before.
Wait a minute.
Doc and Jock.
Wait a minute. You guys are colleagues. You've never talked to him before?
I've never talked to half of these colleagues, supposed colleagues of mine. I'm a freelancer, so I don't get to meet these guys and talk to them as much as maybe some other guys that actually work there full-fledged. Should I
have told him that, hey, Vito's your colleague there at the Free Press? You think?
I did explain that to him, so I think he knows now.
Oh, okay,
he got the gist that, hey, I'm actually at the Free Press myself, and maybe that's why he was willing to accommodate the request as well. I know he's been on here on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The funny thing with Dave is because of our recording schedule, because of the fact usually, if you want to pull back the curtain a little bit, we usually record 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. in that kind of frame day to day. And so that time is when there's press conferences and pressers. So after the first time he came on, I've literally invited him 8 other times, but he's been busy. He's never formally said...
I didn't know that.
He's never formally said no. It's just that he's always in a presser, or I'd always get him in a spot where, these guys are busy. And so he was always gracious with his time, and now he's on. And so we just kind of know that there are certain times, maybe in the offseason, we can get him a little bit more than during the season because of the fact that dude is busy, and he's writing, and he's got things to do, and he's never been rude. So I want to say this about your colleague. But yeah, you should introduce yourself, especially to your other colleague, Carlos Monarez.
You would like to get him on. Now, he had an interesting article, didn't he, recently, too?
Before the break, I want to get your sense of it, because I was going to ask Dave, but I felt like, you know what, he probably would give a PC answer. He's not going to really, go in depth and critique his colleague, but it's your colleague, Carlos Monarez at the Free Press. He wrote an article saying that the Lions, and the tagline was, the Lions should trade for Tom Brady. And if you see the subtweets, oh my goodness, people at the news, people nationally, people locally, kind of have given grief to Carlos in that article, saying that it was out of line and that article really wasn't worth the paper it was printed on. What was your take on it? Because I know you and I debated it back and forth a little bit, but I said on the Motor City Sports Rant, if you heard, that's kind of the job. Your job is to get attention and kind of throw things out there. But I think the reason why so many people were angry at it was many people that answered and replied to it said, we think he's writing it just to generate clicks, not to send along information, not to further any kind of cause. It just was written to get attention, and that if you actually talk to him, he probably really doesn't believe what he wrote. And I think that really upset a lot of people. But that's the job. Your job is to get attention. And if it's published, then somebody read it and greenlighted it to go. And I'm almost certain if you were able to get the numbers and what it did, it generated clicks, it generated retweets, but a lot of it was negative. So in the end, the only thing I'm going to ask you was it worth it to do?
I would say it wasn't purely clickbait. I'll just say that. Now, was it worth it? Yeah, because we're all attention-seeking. The Free Press is. It needs to hit, a certain amount of, numbers, hit a quota, meet a quota, and because all these editors now, the sports editor at the Free Press, who is Chris Thomas, all these guys are under duress and have these huge job responsibilities, requirements to meet each month. They're looking to get numbers. They need numbers for the website. They need people's eyeballs to gravitate towards the website. And maybe at times it is, something like this maybe as a result of the fact that not enough people are going to the website, not enough attention is being brought to the website, not enough hits are happening, not enough clicks on these articles pushed out by the Free Press and other entities, other journalistic entities. So it does come back to that, but I think Carlos Monarrez and him writing it, you said he might not even believe it to be true himself. I think, I'm going to defend him and say I think he thought it was true at least, more than not. I mean, how much you said, like 100% true? Maybe he didn't think it was 100% true. But now, Vito, it's not logistic. Now, it's not feasible, right? Is that what you're trying to say? It's not going to happen, so why write it?
Right, but Vito,
is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the point is that the Lions would incur such a massive penalty for the signing that it's impossible to do because that would accelerate his cap. It would affect everything that they'd be able to do. They couldn't go out and basically sign any free agent. This offseason, they could only sign one free agent if they traded Stafford because there are salary cap ramifications, and everybody pointed it out that anybody that looks at it, you cannot logistically, you can say that Stafford should be cut, or you could say and joke around about it, but to put the tagline that it should happen when it's impossible to happen, especially for a quarterback. You don't trade a quarterback who that's 30 for a quarterback that's 40. Now, if you want to make an argument, if you really want to generate clicks, just wait one extra day. Or if you really wanted to put something out, just say, hey, if you want to put something maybe that's in the realm of possibility, even though it's still the same cap ramifications, is you could have said the Lions need to trade Stafford for Foles.
Or for Bill Belichick.
Or something like that.
There we go.
Yeah.
Over somebody else. But the thing is, that wouldn't get as many people's eyes on the website, on the Free Press, on the print edition. Not as many people would have been picking up a copy, buying newspapers, as were the case with this article that came out, courtesy of the Free Press, and Carlos Monarrez being the man that penned the article, actually. Nick Foles, that's not logistic either. Why would you trade a franchise passer, a man that you've devoted so much money to over the long term, for Nick Foles, a backup, for the most part? Now, had a hell of a postseason, and a great Super Bowl MVP. Thing is, though, at the end of the day, yeah, that article mostly was based upon the fact that you're looking for views for the website. You're looking for hits, and that's going to get people to gravitate towards your website, and subsequently you will get more hits than you would for a basic article. It's like Jim Harbaugh, the Jim Harbaugh effect. Whenever you write about his khaki pants, about him coaching, doing this or that, whether or not it's crazy, makes any sense or not, guess what? The Free Press and the Detroit News and these other entities, website entities and publications, get hits. So it does come to that, down to that largely. But a good point that you brought up too, for why it's not feasible, is why would you trade for a 40-year-old? Now, if Tom Brady was 35, right, then we're probably talking about something different and there's more, relevance to the story. I think the story would be more credible. But because he's 40, going to be 41 now next season, yeah. That lessens the credibility of or relevance of the article, and that's why I think the article got so much blowback. It really got a ton too, and like you said before, look at the tweets, right? The subtweets.
Whoa.
Wow. The Free Press got slammed for that article, and all across the board got slammed for that article.
Unbelievable. So I'll only ask you this ahead of the break.
Yep.
Have you ever written something kind of with the notion that, look, I think this is going to be attention-seeking. This is going to get a lot of hits? Yeah,
for the Detroit Athletic Company blog, I can say that. And it's not always the most journalistically ethical, okay? But you also want to gain attention for your website. And to sum it all up, the article was about why I believed that Brad Ausmus wasn't fired. Remember when reports came out a couple seasons ago that he would be fired? NBC, Channel 4 was reporting it. Other entities were reporting it. Jeff Moss, we know who that is. He was reporting it. It looked like it was going to happen. We were rapidly awaiting it to happen. Then it never did. Well, I had written a piece about that, about me believing, my theory on that very note being that he wasn't fired because of the backlash that Al Avila would have received for making the move after the fact. Because he waited, even after all those reports came out, nothing happened, no action was made. Then, I thought after all that, time had passed by that, he's not firing him now because he didn't want the PR nightmare on his hands. So it was something of that. No, I forget the specifics, but it was about Brad Ausmus and my theory on why he wasn't fired. Because I know that article received a lot of hits, too, for the Detroit Athletic Company blog.
All right, Vito, let's take our first time out. What do we got in the second half of this very fine podcast?
In the second half, I did want to actually play a little game of Jeopardy with you to see what you know about the NFL. We'll talk about that and a few other things in the second half of this podcast.
You're listening to Two Bad Hombres on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Yeah, we coming now.
And Doc, I had mentioned how I wanted to play a little game of Jeopardy with you. the easier option might just be us playing the clip from Jeopardy, at least some of it. So if you can find that, I retweeted it. Very interesting, very funny. And Jeopardy, the official Twitter handle for Jeopardy, too, trolled the Cleveland Browns in a tweet regarding this thing on Jeopardy last week.
All right, I'm on YouTube. What do I search?
So I would search Jeopardy and Cleveland Browns. It's also retweeted on my page. You could just watch it via Vito Jerome, by the way. So the category was something about NFL. It was NFL themed, and these contestants, none of them knew anything about the NFL. So it was very funny, too, once again, the tweet based off of that the official Twitter handle of Jeopardy sent out. And this was last week, I believe, when it went down.
Is it called Talking Football / Jeopardy?
Should be that.
Okay, let's
check it out and let's see.
Football 200.
Your choice. Do or don't name this play in which the quarterback runs the ball and can choose to pitch it to another back. It's an option play, right?
Silence.
And there's more
400.
to this.
I can tell you guys are big football fans.
Yeah.
Tom Landry perfected the shotgun formation with this team. Dallas Cowboys. Do you think we should go to commercial? Ryan?
Take it on to 600.
Okay, by signaling for one of these, a returner can reel in a kick without fear of getting tackled. Fair catch. 2 clues left, Ryan.
800.
These penalties are simultaneous violations by the offense and defense that cancel each other out. And they are called offsetting penalties. Let's look at the $1,000 clue just for the fun of it. Jimmy?
As Minneapolis' U.S. Bank Stadium prepares to host Super Bowl 52, I'm looking at the Ring of Honor with names from this defensive line that took the Vikings to 4 Super Bowls.
If you guys ring in and get this one, I will die. Who are the purple people eaters? We're going to take a break.
Yeah, I had to take a break after that one. That was hilarious, I thought. And Alex Trebek, the host of Jeopardy, longtime host, I think always, he's been the host. He threw some major shade at those contestants. He was letting them hear it. And embarrassing for all 3 contestants not to know even the $200 valued question there. I mean, God, it was bad and awful display of sports knowledge by those contestants on that episode of Jeopardy.
So, Vito, if I'm correct, if I listened to that correctly, they didn't get a single one.
They didn't get a single answer correct in that, with the category being NFL themed. Yeah.
That's funny.
Didn't get one of them right. Wow. Embarrassing, huh? And like I said, Jeopardy's official Twitter handle might be just at Jeopardy on Twitter, threw some major shade saying that how the contestants got none of those right. None of those, questions right there on Jeopardy. It equated to the Cleveland Browns in their season, saying that they got nothing right and the Cleveland Browns had 0 victories. So there's the correlation right there. Throwing some major shade at the Browns subsequently via Twitter, and the Browns have received a lot of shade, huh?
My goodness, Vito. Well deserved. Those,
yes.
If you check out the video, I just typed in Jeopardy and Cleveland Browns, and the video is quite hilarious because some of those people that have intellectual prowess, they may not know a bunch about sports, and so it's kind of funny to have a whole category and things like that. It's pretty funny stuff. It's really funny.
Yeah, where they can go without, getting a single one right. And these people, like you said, can be so highly intellectual, and then it comes to sports questions, simple ones for you and I as sports fans, and they can't get a single one right. So that was hilarious. And I guess there's a reason why they don't bring up many sports-themed categories on Jeopardy. They leave that for Sports Jeopardy, hosted by Dan Patrick.
No doubt about it. Did you hear the news regarding Dan Patrick maybe going to ESPN?
I was going to say, kind of segging into that. Now, we weren't going to talk about this, but there was a rumor floating around, and he addressed it on his very show on Monday after the Super Bowl about how there might have been a reunion of him with ESPN. It's not going to happen, by the way.
And it's not with SportsCenter. It was involving other projects and things like that.
And his show, Sports Jeopardy, seeing if that could be actually placed on ESPN, broadcast, somehow, some way. So that's what we were talking about with real Jeopardy, regular Jeopardy, and then, second into that, the Sports Jeopardy show hosted by Dan Patrick. But yeah, DP is not going back to the mothership, as he calls it. He loves referring to it as a mothership on his radio show, The Dan Patrick Show.
Now, Vito, we got to seg into something a little bit controversial, and you, I guess, had seen what I tweeted because it got a major response on our Twitter page, and it was just basic, and some people were like, why would you even ask such a simple question? But going back to last week, what had happened was Dr. Larry Nassar convicted, and he had to face the wrath of several of his victims One of the victims had 3 daughters, and it was the dad of the victims. And he asked the judge, quite frankly, and the video went viral. It was seen well over millions of times. And he asked the judge, can I have 5 minutes with Dr. Larry Nassar? With the premise that he wanted to basically whoop his ass.
Yep.
And he said, and the judge said, no, that's not how our legal system works. And then he proceeded to say, fine, you don't want to give me 5 minutes, can I just have 1 minute with him? And just before the judge was finished answering, he went and charged Dr. Larry Nassar. The video went viral of him getting tackled by police. He did not get a chance to strike Dr. Larry Nassar, but it was very controversial, and people debated it back and forth because of the fact that our judicial system does not allow retaliation in court. You can't go out there and punch a convicted felon. You can't go out there and assault somebody that maybe has done some harmful things to your family, and that's what makes us a civil society. So I take in the stance of, look, of course I would do that. If something where somebody assaults my family, I would, excuse me, I want to rephrase what I said. Of course that thought would run in my mind to do it because of the fact that how could somebody be so brazen? How could somebody be so mentally ill that they would assault several women, several girls? How can someone be so disgusting in their choices and disgusting in their behaviors, right? The thought would cross my mind. But then what would happen is rational thought would take over. I would not want to face any persecution. I would not want to risk any relationships that I had. So if you ask me would I do it, the answer would be no. Would I think it? Of course. I don't even believe this guy was punished. I believe he went out and said, I'm embarrassed by what I did. And
he did apologize. You're right.
He
after
apologized
the fact.
to the court.
Yep.
And so, Vito, the way I want to take this is just I'm going to take the rational stance is what makes us a civil society is the fact that we follow the rule of law. Okay, we're not vigilantes. You know, unfortunately, I never want to think about something bad happening to my family. And knock on wood, I'm going to pray and have faith that nothing bad ever does. But if something unfortunate were to happen, if a criminal act would befall my family, okay, and I had to sit there and address the court, I may debate even going to court to address somebody like that, but the thought would cross my mind to do something foul like that, but I would not. I would then go address the court. And unfortunately, you do sometimes think about these things, and it's a little bit grim. But if you had to address somebody that did something bad to your family, I just would say, I forgive you, I'm praying for you, and I know that your days on earth are going to be filled with hate and rotten, and your days are going to be filled with nasty thoughts, and I hope that your experience in jail is toxic and things like that, but I'm going to still pray for you and hope the best for you and your family, and, you know, I forgive you being a Christian person. And so that's what I would utter, and then I'd leave and probably be emotional about something that was awful that happened to my family. But we're not vigilantes. I'm not a vigilante. And when you come from a religious faith and things like that, you know the age-old adage, an eye for an eye is toxic. An eye for an eye just leads to two people with no eyes, right? In essence.
There we go. And you know what? We don't take law into we don't take law into our own hands. We let the court settle these incidents. And you know what? The judge in that case told the man, you can't get a minute. You can't get 5 minutes alone with this guy, okay? That's not how we handle things civilly. And we're civilized citizens, right? As Americans, that's the way of how we do things. We're following the protocol of law. And how law is applied is determined in court. That's why we have the court system. For me, I would have been way too scared to go after anybody. Obviously, I have, limited height and size. I'm not going to go and bull rush anybody to try to get to them and beat them up because eventually they're probably going to beat me up more than I beat them up. I think at all times and in the court, you have to remain civilized. No room for that, but the thoughts maybe would go through my head of wanting to go beat this guy up. But guess what? At the end of days, at the end of his time on planet Earth, he'll have to deal with the repercussions when he sees the big man upstairs. And that's how I look at it, and that's what I believe as a Christian man myself, Doc.
100%, and that's what we believe in is we believe in the fact that we follow the rule of law and we let the courts decide. But, Vito, what do you say to those parents who don't get justice? Let's say there's people that they know that maybe similar to, I guess, I hate to use this family as an example, but you have to sometimes. If you were the Goldman family and you sit and you watch and you know everybody in the world kind of knows. Look, people will, kind of turn a blind eye, but they know. Orenthal James Simpson likely, it was alleged, likely did it. Okay, we can't say
more than likely. He was acquitted. Put it like that. He was acquitted. Yes, he was.
And so, in the eyes of the court, he's not guilty. What do you say to those families that are sitting there and watching our court system? And sometimes it can look like a joke when these lawyers trump up these legalese type things. And these defense lawyers, Vito, they're high paid. They come up with these wild defenses, and sometimes guilty people get off. So if you're that person, would you then say, you know what? what would you think if the Goldman family took retaliation against O.J. Simpson?
Well, I don't think anybody would totally call them out for doing so or think they were in the wrong.
See, Vito,
Trust me, there is that point of view to bring up. You're right. If justice is never served for these families, right?
Right.
Then you could say, well, you take matters into your own hands. Perhaps. Would I do it personally? No. Do I advocate it? No. But do I see why others would do so, would take the matters into their own hands and settle things out of court, and settle things violently in a way that's not legal? Yes, I do see why they would take such action. I just would never advocate it. I will never advocate it, and I will never take that kind of action because I'm not a violent individual. But would I have the thoughts of maybe wanting to commit violence against those individuals that I knew had struck so much harm onto my family? Yeah. And I think it's natural. I think it's human for that thought or those thoughts to run through your head, right? To think they got away with murder or got away with abusing my daughter and justice isn't or hasn't been served. Think about that and how difficult it would be to live with that pretty much for the rest of your life. That's why, you see these people maybe attempt to settle things out of court in a violent fashion. I never will advocate it once again, but I do see the reason why.
Yeah, so that's the part that people will look at in terms of our court system is that it has a lot to be improved. I mean, literally the weight you have, if people are listening to this, and unfortunately, if you get involved in the legal process, the wait is so long, Vito. I mean, people sometimes commit a crime in October or something. They sometimes got to wait till April or May of the next year because of the backlog. It's just so busy and things like that. But before we get to the next topic, what'd you think of the judge in the Dr. Larry Nassar case? A lot of people are kind of saying, look, maybe she kind of heightened herself or heightened the experience a little bit with her speech at the end toward Dr. Larry Nassar, kind of like auditioning for a show or something, that maybe she kind of was a little bit, I mean, she's basically become famous. There's a lot of t-shirts being sold about her. People respected what she said, but there's also the other side that's saying, maybe as a judge, you're not supposed to grandstand like that and kind of just deliver the message, deliver the conviction, and stop with all the judgmental comments that she made towards them.
Well, I would say that judge, yes, probably. Well, she drew more attention to herself than had to be brought to herself because of how she dramatized maybe the situation, so she brought more attention to herself. Did she want that? Was it on purpose? Was it her full intent? I don't know. But I expressed this viewpoint last week or the week before that I believe that what she did was a right thing. Had some merit to, because of the fact that Larry Nassar deserved to hear all of those victim impact statements from the 150 plus that delivered those statements inside the court. So I give Rosemarie Aquilina a lot of credit for doing what she did, allowing all of those victims to have their impact statements heard, and Larry Nassar to have to sit there and to deal with all the repercussions, all the harm that it did to his mental psyche, because guess what? He put all of those women, young girls, older women now, through so much pain and torment mentally and physically that he deserved to sit there through all of it. I did not feel bad for Larry Nassar one bit for him having to endure through all of that.
Now, you know who else I didn't feel bad for?
Who is that?
Tom Gores. My goodness. Did you see what he did when he arrived for Blake Griffin's game earlier this week? Oh, my goodness. People were, I think it occurred over the last weekend.
In his first game, Thursday night at Little Caesars Arena, Tom Gores finally showed up to a game, right? His first since the opening night.
So 9 days ago.
Yeah, so rather recently, he was there and he was drunk out of his mind.
Wow, he showed up with 8 minutes left in the contest, and it was really a little bit unfortunate. Now, I didn't even address the fact that he was drunk, okay? From my Twitter account, @DetroitPodcast, I just noted that, look, dude, you can't show up in a T-shirt. Look the part. So my tweet was about not his drinking, because I noticed that he was throwing T-shirts in the crowd. My tweet was, dress like you own the place, boss, and meaning you can't just show up there in a T-shirt and in blue jeans when you're the owner of the Detroit Pistons. You got to have some decorum. You got to dress the part, meaning you don't have to wear like a 5-piece suit and tie, but at least have an open collar. At least wear a suit.
Come on, leave the chest wide open for the ladies. Come on, he's Mr. LA, all about the bright lights. You really imagine him being in a suit jacket, and tie, and not that he had to do that, but look more formal is what you're saying.
Look more formal and not show up to the...
You think he cares?
Not, yeah, exactly.
He doesn't care about being formal. He's Mr. LA. He came there for the first time to a Pistons game since opening night at Little Caesars Arena. I mean, I think that's the case. And you think he cares about the Pistons product that much? I mean, no. Come on, man. I mean, that's why he's never around the franchise. Doesn't even care enough to be at the games. He's living in L.A., living it up, partying it up, drinking it up. He was drinking it up, too, at that game, Blake Griffin's first game. And it was so funny. I heard a story. My dad heard it like the next day on the radio that I guess he was throwing shirts himself, and it got like 4 feet, one of them, and it hit one of the cheerleaders.
Yep.
Like, man, what are you doing? He looked so foolish. It was embarrassing for the franchise. But at the end of the day, for you and I, it was still kind of funny. Seeing how drunk he was, how horrible he acted when he's the boss. He's a team owner. And you act like that? He could care less about the Pistons product. He was there to see Blake. Will he ever be at another Pistons game this season? Or next year? Maybe the first game next year, too? I mean, it's pitiful. That's the display he put on. I mean, and that's what he's remembered for, right? That's what Tom Gores, if he were to leave the franchise tomorrow, that's what he would be remembered for. And then never wearing a tie, always having his shirt undone, having the chest wide open for the ladies and guys to see. That's what you would remember about Tom Gores. And that's your Pistons owner.
Yeah.
Seriously?
It's embarrassing because, but at the same time, when I debated it with the crew, people said, look, if you were the owner, we all dream of doing stuff like that, owning a team, but you would think that the other owners would, look down on you. And so I wouldn't act that way. If the other owners don't act that way, you can't basically run the team like it's your club. You got to run it
not
like
a club. I mean, nobody else was there to live it up and to be a part of a club, the club scene.
You're saying if you were the owner of the Pistons, you might wild out and have a fun night or two?
I would. So I still would, even though I just made fun of him and said it was embarrassing, I would, but I wouldn't be as visible with it. I mean, he made it so darn evident. He's on TV after the game and the postgame on Fox Sports Detroit. You could see him lingering there after Matt Shepard's postgame interview. Before that, did you see him trying to shake the hand of Blake Griffin and Anthony Tolliver? Then they took that photo together. Did he even know there was a camera there and that his photo was being taken? It looked like he didn't even know where the hell he was at that point.
Within 5 minutes, a drunk Tom Gores Twitter account was opened.
That's how much people loved it.
Yeah,
He was living it up, but it's still a bad example for the team owner, right? Mm-hmm. And then you're never around. Then you're around and you're drunk and you're acting like that. You don't even know where you are. And then you see him brush it up like it was no big deal. The handshake that didn't happen between him and Blake when he tried to shake his hand. Blake Griffin went over to Matt Shepard for the postgame interview. Well, when Blake Griffin did that, guess what? Tom Gores tried to make it look like it was no big deal. He stuck his finger out at him like, hey, bro, yeah, I've got you, no biggie. Did you see that after the failed handshake? Yeah. I mean, this guy was a mess. It was so laughable. He went viral. And once again, that's the biggest memory he has right now as Pistons owner, is being drunk for Blake Griffin's debut.
Yeah. I mean, you probably will see him again because the Pistons are playing pretty well.
They've been good of late, and actually 4-0 completely since the trade was executed. Now, since Blake Griffin's played with the Pistons, 3-0, but 4-0 in totality if you count the night in which the trade was executed, which was Monday, January 29th. Now, I know that date. I don't think it's weird. I know it because of an article I just penned for the Detroit Athletic Company blog, which should come out this week, courtesy, once again, of the Detroit Athletic Company blog.
Vito, I really enjoy your work at the Detroit Athletic Company and your various works at the Free Press, the Detroit Athletic Company, Sound Mind, Sound Body, the Free Press. You do really great work, especially here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Real good stuff, and it was a fun experience being at the Blake Griffin press conference. Real quick, I touched on it on the Motor City Sports Rant. You can listen to it there, but it was real fun. And you know what? One of the best parts about that, Vito, was I didn't know it was broadcast live nationally on ESPN, on Fox Sports Detroit, and among various outlets on the ticket. So people were messaging me like, hey, that was you, in terms of the couple questions that I did ask. And then the funniest part was, though, I probably like it too much, but I definitely enjoyed photobombing and walking through the video shot of Fox Sports Detroit. And it's on our Twitter page on the like section if you want to see it. Fox Sports Detroit did an interview with Stan Van Gundy, and it was funny because I saw the bright lights, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're live. And so I'll tell you.
Oh, you made sure you were behind Matt Shepard for that hit.
I intentionally walked through a couple of the shots, and it was funny. I had a good time with that. I probably won't do it again, but I told my wife, and she's like, you're such a big dork. I'm like, you know what? It was funny to me, so I did it because I've always actually wanted to do it. You know what I mean? It's weird to say that you just want to walk through a live shot, but I've seen it before, and so it was funny to me, and I had a good time with the press conferences, and hopefully we get a chance to do a lot more and things like that. It's been a fun experience with the network now, being able to go out and represent the brand and really kind of showing a little decorum, asking good questions, and getting a response from the athletes. But I could tell you, I was intimidated by Blake Griffin. He walks in, he's clean cut, Dude's making $30 million a year almost. I felt intimidated by him. And the fact of the matter is, he's so well spoken. He's professional.
Articulate.
He's articulate and he's professional. He handled the tough questions because a reporter asked him about him being injury prone, and he said, "Look, you can't prevent those things. You can't play your game scared. You just gotta play your game and see what happens." He just handled it and rolled off the tongue, and so. He was polished, and it was nice to see because it was professional. It was well run. They did a live hit from the Palace, and so it was fun to get out there and do it. But the final thing I want to talk about before
time out. That press conference was at the Palace?
It was at the Palace.
I still know. I can't comprehend some of that stuff.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what's going on. I'll break it down for you. The Palace is still used for the practice facility and non-game time stuff like Little Caesars right now, because what's going on is the Pistons play at Little Caesars. And so game day, around 5 o'clock, they have the pressers there at Little Caesars and the game and all the after stuff. But right now, the Pistons are building a new practice facility 2 blocks down. Okay, so currently, for the next year or two, they still practice in Auburn Hills at the Palace. So from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m., the beat writers are out there in Auburn Hills behind the Palace where the practice facility is. And the bigger press conferences that occur are occurring at the Palace. Okay, so it's still being utilized for press conferences and things like that. It's still being used by the Pistons right now.
See, I find that so stupid.
Vito,
I know they have to, but it sounds logistically when you hear that. So why did you even leave the Palace in the first place?
Vito, because of the fact that you're
an
building
arena that was built for hockey, built for the Red Wings.
Vito,
and they're not getting any more attendance. Their attendance could be down from last year, from their last season at the Palace.
If you have the opportunity to build something new and you're waiting...
It's new and shiny, and look, they still have nobody coming. Is my point. They could have stayed at least another year at the Palace, is all I'm trying to say. And they could have had a better send-off than last season. That's my point.
Okay, and you are entitled to it, but the Pistons are wanting part of the money from Little Caesars Arena, and they know they got it. That's why they got Blake Griffin, Vito. They're making moves to try to put asses in the seats, so they're trying their best, and they know that to get people to come down there, they got to win. And it's also, you got to remember, Vito, sometimes you got to think a little bit beyond what the basics and the optics are. Tom Gores wanted to be partners with the Ilitch organization because of the shows, the other type stuff too, and they're building a new entertainment brand. Tom Gores is about the money, so he's not entering into a deal that's going to lose him money. Yes, his Pistons are a tenant in that building, but he's also part of a larger partnership with the Ilitch organization, and so cha-ching, bada bing for him. He's not making moves that are going to cost him money. And when you can get a practice facility built for you at a greatly reduced rate due to tax breaks, you're going to take advantage of it. So you can sit here and rant and rave about it, but he don't care.
I know he doesn't care. I'll still rant and rave. I don't care what he thinks. We don't care about each other and what we think. But you know what's funny? You know what he can do? You said entertainment. That's why he got Blake Griffin, truly. He's a stand-up comedian. He's going to have him just do stand-up comedy. Forget if he gets injured, he's got him for stand-up comedy for all that money.
But right now he's balling. He's helping out.
He's balling out right now. He truly is.
Now, Vito, I can't believe I read this report, and it's going on quite a bit. I don't understand how this is happening. What do you think, and what do you make of the story regarding Rob Gronkowski coming home only to find his home vandalized?
Yeah, I heard about that.
It happens more than you think. These celebrities, despite the fact his home has a cage and is secure, that leads you kind of to think maybe inside job that somebody maybe let on some information, because when these things happen, I probably truly believe that it happens based on inside information, like maybe a staff member or somebody in security tips off somebody else and they come in and there's a lot of money in these homes. There's jewelry, there's precious mementos, there's things that are worth a lot of money. And so that's why these homes are robbed. But can you imagine you go on a trip to the Super Bowl? 1, you lose. 2, you come back and you're like, my home is ransacked. Everybody knows about it, and you got to come back and attend to that. It's freaky, and if you're an athlete, if you're somebody that has a huge home, is there really truly a way to secure your home? I mean, do you have to? And what ends up happening is usually the storyline goes, these homes get robbed, and then afterwards, after the event occurs, then they go to 24-hour security and upgrading the surveillance. What would you do if you had a bunch of money, you got a big home? Would you surround your home with a bunch of security 24/7 and just say, screw it, it might cost me $100,000 a year, but if I'm making $15 million a year, so be it. I would attend to security a lot. Surveillance.
Just let the people have the money. Mm-hmm. I would just let people have money. I would leave money, like stacks, $100 bills all around the premises of my house, in front of my house, in the backyard. Let anybody steal it. Let anybody have it. I would just be that gracious of a man.
Oh, yeah?
No, but realistically,
take my money.
Would I keep security guards and a security presence 24/7, like security guards stationed all around my house? Is it feasible? Is it worth it? You could still have somebody break in, right? I mean, are you going to staff your house Truly, your mansion with security guards 24/7. So when you're sleeping, there's security guards there as well, wide awake. Are you really going to do that, pay all that money? Some of these athletes, actually a lot of these celebrities, big money-making celebrities and athletes such as Rob Gronkowski, they're cheap. They don't want to pay anybody for anything. So they're really going to pay security guards and a security presence 24/7 for their mansion? I don't know about that. I don't know if I would do, because I don't know if I would want to spend money on that, because I wouldn't care or worry about somebody breaking into my home that much. Now, it could happen. It did happen to Gronk, but it could happen when there is a security presence nearly 24/7, right? I just know you prevent it by having that security, full-on security presence 24/7. But it doesn't mean that there won't be somebody breaking in. And maybe an inside job, because you can't truly prevent an inside job. If they know about your house, where you live, maybe how to get in. You know, it could have been a family member or a friend. Now, you wouldn't think that. And none of those individuals, or those friends or family members, will be suspect A, B, or C. But it could have been that kind of a deal, too, where the person really has a lot of intel about Rob Gronkowski and his house and how to get into it. They've been inside the house, right? It could be that. You really want to break it down from every single angle here, which I guess I am, and going over the edge here with that. But that's just my take.
Have you ever been in a nice home, like a really big, like 5,000 square foot plus home?
I always joke around when I'm in a big home like that. I don't know if it's been that big, but I say to my brother or like my friends too, just take one thing and see if they notice. We never do. I'm like, hey, you know, as a courtesy to them, we'll take one item. Let's see if they notice. I used to have a friend that lived in a nice area, gated subdivision. And I would say that every single time I stepped into his house, I think he knew about it. And I never actually took anything, okay? I'm a good Samaritan. I'm a good Christian boy. Remember that.
Good stuff, Vito. Can I ask, have you ever did like some small shoplifting as a kid?
No, you know, I was always too scared.
Gotcha.
Really. Now, I wouldn't be scared to take something from a friend's home, but I've never done that either. I've never. And I would never take anything of high magnitude, of high value. Come on. I'm not like that. I'm no thief here.
Okay, you're a law-abiding citizen.
I'm a law-abiding citizen, absolutely.
And more importantly, you have morals because of your religious faith, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, Vito. Good stuff.
Thank you.
I enjoyed the podcast, man. It went by so fast.
It zoomed by.
It zoomed by. Thank you to Dave Birkett for giving us some knowledge regarding Matt Patricia. I enjoyed the conversation. Really good episode of Two Bad Hombres, Vito. And congratulations again on being named the highest-paid sports podcaster in town. You are well worth the decision and worth the investment. Although, I got to let you in on something. You got competition barking behind you.
Who's coming now?
Guess.
You yourself?
No, I am. No,
somebody else with another name outside of John Charles Macaron,
yes.
You're saying?
Vito, currently you are the vice president of sales and marketing for the network. I am obviously the president of sales, and I oversee your work. But there's somebody else with connections that's now behind the scenes making up a bigger deal that could end up being really lucrative to me and the network, and he could overtake you as the highest paid sports salesman in podcasting. So, rhymes with Fakota.
Oh, really?
He's on the trail. He's joining the team. So, listen, you know, Vito, I respect you, but...
Do you think I'm scared of this individual you just named?
Well, I'm planting the seeds to let you know that in a week or two, there could be an announcement that's really awesome for the network. And
so awesome for me.
No, it'd be awesome for
He said awesome for the network.
It is awesome.
I'm a part of the network.
You are, but, you know, to get...
But subsequently, it doesn't mean that it would be awesome for me?
It would be awesome for you, but maybe not in terms of the dollars and cents.
Okay.
But it would create competition, which maybe would be good because, you know, all you can do is build a sales team that can sell.
There you go.
And so far, so good. I'm happy with what you're doing, but obviously I want more.
Keep competing, keep selling.
So
now, do I have to bow down to you because you gave me this nice lucrative check earlier?
No, Vito, you don't have to do that.
Good
Vito,
God.
You just got to show up and have fun and don't sue us and don't create drama. And actually, in the end, I think about, you know, representing the brand and things like that. The brand of the network is good right now, so just don't sully the brand. I mean, I don't know how you could because we own it. How do you sully the brand? I mean, I don't think we're going to say and do anything that's going to cost us followers or sponsorships. Just keep doing what you're doing, and actually, you know, all I would say is just more. Just try and do better than 2017. That's all I can ask for.
And you know what? I can promise to you, I won't slander your name. You won't be liable for anything, any lawsuits, and that's what we'll leave you with on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Churco, signing off for this week's episode.
You're a dick.
It's been